In 1985, Apple was the most innovative company on Earth. Microsoft was a tiny software vendor nobody took seriously. 40 years later, one of them is worth nearly twice the other. But the story of how we got here, it has two crossovers, one near death and one of the greatest comebacks in the history of business. Let's watch it happen. 1985. The Macintosh is 1 year old and already changing everything. A graphical interface, a mouse, a computer that actually felt human. Apple is at $1.9 billion in revenue. They invented this category. Microsoft, $140 million, shipping Windows 1.0, a clunky shell bolted over MS-DOS. Nobody at Apple is losing any sleep over this. By 1990, the Mac is still the gold standard. $5.6 billion for Apple, the design benchmark, the professional's choice. But something is shifting. Windows 3.0 just launched, and it works on every cheap PC clone in every office on the planet. $1.2 billion for Microsoft, and growing very, very fast. 1995, Apple crosses $11 billion in revenue, its highest point ever. Nobody inside the company sees what's about to happen. Meanwhile, people are literally lining up outside stores at midnight to buy Windows 95, 7 million copies in the first month. Microsoft at $6 billion, and the gap is closing overnight. And right here, 1996, the lines cross for the first time. Microsoft overtakes Apple. Not because the Mac got worse, because Windows became the default operating system for every computer on Earth, while Apple's own leadership crisis was tearing the company apart from the inside. Cheap IBM clones running Windows flooded the market. Apple burned through CEOs and shipped overlapping, confusing product lines. Windows 95 closed the experience gap almost overnight. And the more PCs that ran Windows, the more software got built for Windows. The flywheel became unstoppable. 1997. Apple is losing nearly $1 billion a year. The board buys Steve Jobs' company Next just to keep the lights on. Revenue down 36% from the peak. 90 days. That's how close Apple came to shutting down completely. And in one of the most ironic moments in business history, Microsoft invests $150 million directly into Apple, partly to avoid antitrust trouble, partly because a dead Apple was bad for Microsoft's image. $7.1 billion for Apple, $11.4 for Microsoft. The gap is now a canyon. By 2000, Steve Jobs is back. The iMac is a cultural moment, but Apple is still only $8 billion in revenue. The product line is simplified. The brand is healing. It's just not enough yet. Microsoft crosses $23 billion. Windows and Office run on the vast majority of computers on Earth, 3 times Apple's size. Almost no one believes this gap ever closes. 2005. The iPod has made Apple culturally relevant again for the first time in a decade. $13.9 billion. Revenue has nearly doubled in 5 years. But Microsoft is printing $40 billion a year from Windows and Office alone, nearly 3 times Apple's size. Even Apple's own shareholders aren't sure this story ends well. 2009. The iPhone is 2 years old, and it's already clear this device is going to change everything. Apple at $36.5 billion, nearly tripled in 4 years. The gap is closing fast. Microsoft isn't standing still either. After the Vista disaster, Windows 7 is a hit, $58.4 billion, still well ahead, but the chart looks very different than it did in 2000. And here, 2010, it happens again. Apple's revenue overtakes Microsoft for the first time in nearly 15 years. The iPhone 4, the iPad, the App Store. In 3 years, Apple built an entirely new revenue category that Microsoft had no answer for. Apple didn't enter an existing market. It created a new one and captured almost all of its profits for over a decade. The App Store became a new economy. Microsoft missed mobile entirely. Windows Phone never got traction. And Apple kept stacking categories on top of the iPhone while Microsoft's core growth stayed comparatively flat. $65.2 billion for Apple, $62.5 for Microsoft. The two lines are almost touching, but Apple is on top, and this time it doesn't give the lead back. 2015, iPhone 6, the biggest phone Apple ever made. It sells like nothing before it. $233.7 billion for Apple, 2.5 times Microsoft's size. Satya Nadella has taken over Microsoft and is pivoting hard to Azure. It's the right long-term move, but in pure revenue terms, Apple has already lapped them. 2020, App Store, iCloud, Apple Music, Apple TV+. Services alone generate tens of billions a year, even before you count a single iPhone. $274.5 billion. Microsoft at $143 billion. Azure is now a genuine cloud giant, and the stock is soaring, but Apple's hardware ecosystem still dwarfs it in raw revenue. The gap has held for a decade. 2024, Apple at $391 billion. The company that was 90 days from bankruptcy in 1997 is now the most valuable consumer technology company in the history of the planet. Microsoft at $245 billion. Still a $1 trillion business, still growing. Cloud, AI, Copilot, the next chapter is real. But by total revenue, Apple's lead built since 2010 has never once gone away. Apple, $391 billion. Microsoft, $245 billion. Let both bars fill completely in silence for 2 seconds. 2 crossovers, 1 near death, 1 comeback that nobody predicted at either crossover. The tech throne changed hands twice, and the second time, Apple never gave it back. If you want to see more rivalry stories like this, subscribe, and drop a comment below with which 2 companies I should chart next. Nike versus Adidas is already live on the channel. The answer on that one, just as surprising.